All right, so I have this flying circus practice mission. Initially, it was set up so that you can fly either side, and that there's a balance there. It's a total of 36 planes per side. So it's six groups of planes for each side. Each group has six planes in it. Um, and as far as keeping everything in check and in balance, there's counters so that as a group of six planes comes out, it's going to count, say, three kills before it allows the next group to come out, and then six kills, and so on. So the counters are what really um, keep the performance in check. Let's see, actually, I did a little spreadsheet here. So here's, say Allied and Access, and as the random events get chosen, so when event one goes off, it'll randomly select one of three groups. Six planes will come out. You have to kill three planes, a balance of three, before the next event goes off, which will randomly select then two of the three um, groups, adding another six planes, um, you know, performance check, a buildup of nine, and so on. So the idea is that I don't want either side to build up beyond nine because I don't want to see more than 18 planes on the map between the both sides at the same time because the performance starts to drop. You start getting more than 18 enemy AI on the map, things go downhill. And for the most part, if pilots are aggressive, you actually don't even get up to 18. But again, that's for a balance between the two sides. But overall, it's the counters and how many planes you have to kill before it allows the next set of planes to come out that keeps the overall performance in check. So we want to keep that in mind. Now, in addition to this, I have um, used Coconut's random timers, a four-way switch, to add variable times to this as well. So let's see, let's zoom in here. Let's see, so we've got the random group timer. So we're going to look at the access fighter. And what we've got here is we've got the first one, which is fighter group 1 of 18, and then we got another um, fighter group 2 of 18, and you can see the groups 1, 2, 3, and then 4, 5, 6. And then what happens is when the um, very first group goes off, it's going to use a four-way switch here. So you can set random times here when you want that initial group to go off. I've got it set from 5 seconds to a minute. So I know that once this is triggered, between 5 seconds and a minute, the first group's going to be selected and it's going to go off. And then each of the different groups, they have their own um, four-way switch. So random timers again. So once the first group goes off, then it'll start using the four ways that come after the group. And what I did is I set these for 1 minute, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, and 7 minutes. So that way you don't really know when when it's going to come in. And then once one of the groups is selected, it's going to go to um, activate the group, and then the plane sets are like here's wing 1 and 2, wings 3 and 4, so that's two elements. Wing 5, that's a single plane, and a wing 6. And they each have their own timer. So that way, here again, 5 seconds, 1 minute, 10 seconds, a minute 30, 3 minutes. So if this group is selected, it'll take a total of 3 minutes for all these planes to go off. So you can adjust these of when the planes are actually activated. And you really want to make sure there's some separation here. So um, you don't have all six planes coming out at the same time. Okay, so now let's kind of go back here and let's just look at the time counters. So what we got where we talked about the counters is, and they're they're labeled so that um, we would come up here. Let's go ahead and come up here. Let's activate this, and here you can see that's set to 3, and it says a count of 3 of 6 that are activated. And you go down to the next counter, and here's 6, and that's kill count 6, 9 of 12, because you've already killed 3. Um, so we need to kill 6 more of the 9 of a total of 12 that have been activated. And it just goes on down the line. And then when you go into the next group, you'll have to come back down here and set that group as working, and then adjust, come down the line and adjust those counters. But what this does is let's go ahead and reset everything. As all these planes go off and it keeps going on down the line, it'll deactivate the counters that have already been used, and it keeps track of all the planes that have been activated. So technically, if you came down and you're in the last group, you could still be counting a plane you haven't killed from the very first group if it just happened to not get killed. But the bottom, so basically, as it goes on, it keeps track of all the planes that are being released, not just of the individual groups. So it's accumulative. Okay. So what does that mean? Well, basically, you can adjust the counters how you like to make it more aggressive by decreasing the number of planes you have to kill before the next group comes out. But again, you want to keep in mind the performance check. You could try to exceed it, if you want, see how it works out. But 18's kind of max for me, and I'm kind of counting on it never actually hitting 18. That more than that will get killed. So, anyways, you can adjust the counters to make it more or less aggressive. You can adjust the random timers of the four-way switch for the very first group that comes out. You can set this all to 0 if you want. So when it goes off, it just goes and picks a group, and it'll immediately fire that group off. The very first group bypasses the four-ways switches for those groups. Only the very first group. Here you can see these are all deactivated. Once any one of these is picked, it'll reactivate the four-ways for the other 2 groups. So that way you always have control over when this all starts, and then after that, you just set the timers for all the other groups, because you don't really know what the first group is going to be. Okay, and then you have the timers for each group of when the elements go off and the single planes go off. So that's basically what you can adjust as far as how aggressive you want to make this, or how tame, is just by adjusting the counters and the timing. Say you wanted this to be as absolutely as aggressive as possible. I want it all just to go off. I'm not concerned about performance, basically. Well, you'd go in and you'd set every one of these counters for 1. Only 1 plane in that has to be killed for the next group to go off. And then you go into all of these four-ways, and you would just set them for like a second or something, 1 second each. And so same thing for all these. You just set all those timers like to 1 second. So now everything's just gonna fire off, immediately. And then for the individual groups, same thing. Only I would make sure that these come out separate. You don't want all 6 planes coming in at the same time. So I would create some separation there. But you could make it really low. You can make all of these come out in like 20 seconds, Set it for 3 seconds, 5 seconds, 10 seconds, and 20 seconds, but you get the drift. So essentially, what you've done is you just made this whole thing just fire off by um, almost zeroing out all the random timers and setting all the kill counters to 1. Um, so, anyways, that's kind of how you adjust this. If you wanted to um, fly just one side, you could do it a couple ways. One of them is I adjusted the counters to slow down how fast the planes came in on one side. I didn't change the counters at all to make sure the balance was maintained. But really, what you could do if you wanted is you could um, disable um, you could disable the planes altogether, for one side. So if we come in here where it starts, you got a 3-second delay to kick this whole thing off. You could remove the link so it never fires off. You could set this to 3-second delay. That's a control over everything. If you wanted, you could set this for 2 hours or something. It'll never go off. Um, if you wanted to um, reduce the number of planes in each of the groups from going off, once a day, I really don't want 6 planes to come out. I just want 4. Same thing, you could either get rid of the link or leave the links and just set the timers for a couple of these planes, for some extreme amount of time that the odds are you'll never see it. Set it for 2 hours or something. You'll never see the planes go off. Just keep in mind, if you remove, a couple of these planes, then you need to make sure that the counters correspond to that. See, we're doing 3 of 6, but if we're going to do 4, 3 might be a little tight. You might want to change it to 2 because you never know if one of those stinking planes will, just not die or something. So I would never make it 100%. So, anyways, you could again slow down a couple of the planes, just so it's basically you're only gonna see 4. Just make sure you change the counters to accommodate. If you went into every single one of those groups and said I don't want 6 planes, and I just want to have 4, but I decided to either break the link to those planes or just increase the amount of time so they never go off. You just want to keep in mind that you need to adjust the counters accordingly. You know, so same thing. If you decided to disable one side, you broke it. I'm going to fly on access, but I don't want any friendly access. So I'm just going to disable this altogether. If you do that, then of course that means you could go to the other plane set down here and you could decrease all the counters and still keep it, within the 18 um, buildup. And then that way you're now um, fighting a more aggressive group. And the same thing, you can decrease the counters. You're not going to see any enemy AI. Decrease the counters here, decrease your timers to make it more aggressive, and just play around with it. But basically, that's it. You're what you're adjusting is the initial start timer of when you want everything to start. You're adjusting the counters based on how many planes are going to come out. Then you're going to go, you're going to go in and you're going to adjust the 4-way switches here, these timers, to whatever you want for all the groups, all 6 groups. So you can set that to more aggressive, less aggressive, whatever you want. They don't have to even all be the same. And then you can come in and you can adjust the single timers for when the planes actually get activated. And that's basically it. That's what you're playing with. And if you just adjust the timers and counters, you shouldn't actually have to delete any links or anything. You just might want to change the labels or add a little note or something um, to to remind yourself. So that's it. So without deleting anything or breaking anything. You can just adjust timers and the counters. And then keep in mind that if you decided I'm going to fly Access with no friendly AI against the Allied, and you adjust all the counters and you do all that good stuff, there are mechanics that are tied into making the line on the map change based on the when each group comes out, the color changes, so you can kind of look at the map and see how many groups have come out from each side. Well, if you disable one side, that's not going to happen. And if you disable one side, that's the side that can win. The other side can't win unless those AI groups come out. And if you disable them, there's no way for to actually win the map. You're not going to get a win message or anything like that, you know. But that's not going to mess anything up. So, anyways, those are the areas you can change. Again, just the four-way timer, initial four-way timer, counters. You got the four-way timers, you know, four-way switches for each of the groups. You have the timers for when that groups actually come out. You can edit all that stuff. If you want, you can go into the random behavior. You can edit those to all be ace. And actually, by default, I believe they're all ace. And say you didn't want the random behavior, test it first, you know, save a new map. But I'm pretty sure it works where I set it up so it's a group so that if you come down here in the random skill level, you should be able to just delete this group and then that's gone. It won't, you don't have to do anything else, just delete the group because it's only tied to one link um, to these groups, which is separate. You delete this, it won't affect anything else. There's also some messages in here that I had added with one link connection would give you messages if you want to kind of look at that. Um, but I really tried to set this up so that I could just kind of fiddle with the timers and the counters, or I could go in and, I could, click on the planes and go ahead if I wanted to change, what the plane model was and all that without actually having to dig into um, relinking stuff and removing stuff and going through all that. So that was kind of the initial plan, is just to have the ability to make all those tweaks real quick, go test the mission, come back, and without really screwing with the mechanics too much. And other than that, you just kind of dig into this a little bit. So let's see, what do we got here? Mission duration. So let's move to that. Set that as working. Same thing with here. This is initially set up so that if the map just sits there and nobody joins, nothing really happens. Somebody has to join the map to kind of get the party started, to trigger something. Once one person's joined, fights on. If you join and you leave, the AI will just continue to battle out until someone's won, and then the map will rotate. If it just sits there, it'll sit there for up to like 4 hours, and then it'll rotate. So it doesn't just keep rotating and rotating and rotating. So anyways, you can kind of poke around that stuff. But again, I can't emphasize enough about trying to experiment with changing the counters and timers and stuff before you actually deleting stuff that you really, you don't necessarily have to delete. Just change the timer um, to make something come out or not come out, and just make sure you adjust the counters to counteract that. So, anyways, I hope that helps. A little long-winded. So play around with that. Just, of course, you'll have to always just save it as a new mission, change it in your title here, of course, change the file name, and then you may want to change the briefing depending on what you do. So anyways, I hope that helps. You can have fun just kind of playing around with it. Let me know if anybody zeroes out all the timers and sets all the counters to 1, and let me know how that works out for you, performance-wise. If it does, that means you're really, really good and really killing everything as fast as possible. So, anyways, hope that helps.